Almost every problem being discussed, debated, and argued about around the world is a symptom of a human decision, a result of our management. No matter what issue is being discussed, droughts, floods, wildfires, poverty, poaching, social breakdown, violence, economic instability, mass immigration to cities, pandemics, all the way to climate change. All those problems are symptoms of environmental degradation or desertification, and they are increasing rapidly. Our mounting problems fall into only three categories: social, economic, or environmental. And that's because our individual and collective physical and economic stability depends entirely on the health of our life-supporting environment. Everything we manufacture, produce, and consume on Earth is provided by nature. We cannot eat, drink, breathe, or make money without ecological health, which is why environmental degradation leads to increasing social and economic instability. So if our social and financial well-being depend entirely on nature, it shows us immediately that those things are intricately connected and inseparable. Which means, if we make a decision towards any one aspect in isolation, it must knock on to impact the others at some point. While we are experiencing increasing social, economic, and ecological problems or failures, if you look around the world, you will notice that at a similar but opposite trajectory, we are having rapidly mounting successes in things like phones, weapons, computers, food, machinery, buildings, clothes, furniture, medical equipment, medicine, spacecraft, etc. What do those things have in common? They are all things we either manufacture or produce. They are our tools and technology. Our tools and technology can work independently of each other and of other things. They do not rely on anything else to survive, and the things we make and produce cannot work if we stop using or producing them. They cannot work if a part is missing, or if fuel runs out, or if a battery goes flat, and we can easily change the way we make or produce them. Our tools and technology can be made up of many independent parts, but nothing relies on anything else to survive, which means they can be complicated, but they are not complex. And any problem we have with things we make or produce is relatively easy to fix, given enough time and money. So our mounting problems or failures fall into either social, economic, or environmental categories. Those are not things we manufacture or produce. They are the things we manage. And they are the only things we manage. Everything we make or produce are our tools. They're what we use as tools to help make life easier as we manage our societies, economies, and our environment. If we only manage people, economies, and nature, and we know they are inseparable, and if almost all our mounting problems are social, economic, and environmental, while our successes are technological ones, surely it immediately becomes clear that our mounting problems are being caused by our management. And all management is making a decision. The knock-on consequences of every single human action throughout history can be traced back to someone, somewhere, making a decision or developing a policy. Our problems are being caused by how we make decisions. And we now know why that is happening, and we know how to fix it. In 1983, after a lifetime dedicated to finding out what it is about our management that has caused land degradation to increase over the centuries, my father, Alan Savory, had a massive breakthrough. He discovered a flaw in our management which can be found throughout all ages and cultures, from managing our families to managing entire nations. He found that no matter what management framework, policy, or decision he tested, when he broke it down to the core or to the point of where a decision is made itself, he discovered we are all following an identical decision-making process every single time. No matter who we are or what we are managing, from individuals making daily decisions to governments developing policies, whenever a decision is made, every single one of us is subconsciously following an identical process. And it is genetically inherited. We are all born with it. What he also found was that this process is not just inherent in every human being, but in all other tool-using animals. And just like any other tool-using animal, we started off with simple stick and stone tools and technology. So it isn't just us, but every tool-using animal. And all of us only ever make decisions in the simple context of 3 reasons: to meet a need, fulfill a desire, or to solve a problem. And when our tools were simple sticks and stones, we also only ever had to consider the social implications of our needs, desires, and problems. We didn't have to give any further thought to potentially damaging knock-on consequences because there weren't any. Our decisions were only social, we lived in harmony with our environment, and we were not managing nature and could do no harm with our simple tools. But as our tools and technology advanced, it resulted in a change in our social behavior and us adding more complexity to our social decisions. We began to manipulate and manage our environment, and at some point in time we added a financial component to that increased complexity. Our social decisions now included financial and environmental considerations. But our simple inherited decision-making process prevents us from being able to consider this complexity simultaneously. Because of this, we view, study, and manage people, economies, and nature as entirely separate things. So no matter how comprehensively we might approach a situation, at the point of making a decision, we're all unconsciously applying this identical process, which results in us taking that situation and breaking our decisions down into more manageable parts. So we end up making decisions in the simple context of either a social, economic, or environmental need, desire, or problem. So while we do often acknowledge that our decisions, projects, or policies will have social, economic, and ecological considerations, we will start off by looking at the situation in its entirety, or thinking about it, but then our genetic way of making decisions prevents us from being able to keep that big picture clarity all the way to the point of the decision itself. I'm sure everyone has heard of a systems thinking or holistic approach to something, or the triple bottom line of people, planet, profit. These things all begin by focusing on the way a system's components interrelate. The project or policy is approached with people involved thinking about the social, financial, and environmental complexity involved. But then, just before deciding what actions to take, everything gets broken down into simple context and more manageable parts. Experts are often brought in, and the decisions are made, or advice on actions are given in the narrow context of each separate component. no matter how holistically we think about or approach any policy, project, or decision, not one of us is born with the ability to act holistically. There is no point whatsoever thinking or approaching anything holistically if our actions inevitably and universally end up being reductionist. And the reason we haven't been able to pinpoint the problem until relatively recently is that we've always still usually been able to meet our short-term objectives. And we don't notice the long-term consequences until much later on because they are invisible and usually only felt sometime after and very often far away from a transaction, decision, or policy. That's where things are going wrong. Even when we look at a complex natural system in its entirety, we will still unwittingly break it down into manageable parts at the point of action. The sticking point for us is that the discovery of this inherited and universal decision-making process has flown in the face of thousands of years of belief that we make decisions in a great many different ways, that we have many different ways of managing. We now know for a fact that that belief is wrong. But unfortunately, whenever adults believe something deeply for whatever reason, it is very easy to see evidence that supports our belief, while any evidence not supporting what we already believe becomes virtually invisible. The good news for our future is that children pick up these new insights very, very quickly. And the best news is that even though none of us are born with the ability to simultaneously consider and test the complexity of our decisions, we can teach ourselves how to do it. My father, along with the help of thousands of other scientists along the way, developed the holistic management framework. It involves adding a couple of very simple steps to our genetic decision-making process, starting with developing a broader, holistic context to guide decisions, which just ensures that the full complexity and big picture clarity of the situation isn't ever lost sight of at the point of decision. It is a guiding, filtering process that essentially makes it impossible to make an unsound decision, because it guarantees that the right decision for the unique social, economic, and environmental complexity involved will automatically float to the top and become apparent. I've spent the last few years simplifying this work and these new management insights, and I'm successfully teaching them to young children. As soon as we have school leavers going off into the world ecologically literate and already able to successfully manage and consider the inseparable short and long-term social, financial, and ecological complexity of their decisions, which will prevent any more damaging knock-on consequences, we will, for the first time in human history, be addressing the root cause of increasing land degradation and our most pressing problems. And we will very quickly set ourselves on an exciting new trajectory. And if our children can show governments how to develop sound policies that tie their nation's physical and economic stability to environmental health, we will turn things around rapidly. Because we don't have thousands of problems to solve. We have thousands of symptoms of one problem, an inherited decision-making process.